Hello, everyone. You're watching the Lowellian. I'm Alessandra Fischer, and I'm here with Nicole today. And she's from the Portuguese American Digital Archive. How are you doing, Nicole?
Doing very well. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very excited to be here today with you. And first of all, do you speak any Portuguese?
Eu falo português, sim.
Fala!
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Thank you.
So let's start by you sharing a little about your work, about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Nicole Catarino, and I am the digital archivist for the Portuguese American Digital Archive at the Center for Lowell History as a part of UMass Lowell. And so I am the sole archivist for PADA, which means that some of my duties include going out into the community and speaking with community members, acquiring new collections for the archive, digitizing and organizing any collections I may get, and then managing the existing collections as well.
Okay. So, can you clarify if this is Portuguese speaking community members or restricted to a group?
That's a good question. Yeah. So we tend to focus on mainland Portugal and the Atlantic Islands as well as the Azores. In the future, we would love to branch out to other Lusophone communities and other Portuguese-speaking communities. But right now, we focus pretty heavily on the mainland and the islands.
Good, thank you. So how did the Portuguese community finance Lowell as part of their neighborhood home?
Yeah, so the Portuguese community has actually called Lowell their home for over 200 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and so for this very long expanse of time, we tend to divide that into what we consider 3 different waves of immigration. And so those would be the pioneer generation, which was the first wave, and then what we call the first wave of immigrants and the second wave of immigrants. And so the pioneer generation, these were the very first, the earliest immigrants of the Portuguese community. And this wave tends to span from the late 18th century, so it goes all the way back there, up to about the 1870s. And so the main motivation for many of these Portuguese immigrants to come to America, and in our case specifically Massachusetts, was actually the whaling industry. And so what would happen is a lot of these whalers would hire Azorian sailors for their ships. And as the decades continued, they would, Portuguese immigrants would look for more factory and agricultural opportunities here in America. Actually, funny enough, by the 1850s, that was when the California gold rush was happening. And that's why there's a Portuguese community in California, and specifically San Francisco, because of that. But by the time you get to the 1870s, that's around the time that the textile mills and the garment shops started hiring Portuguese immigrants. And that's how we ended up with several Portuguese immigrants starting to make their home in Lowell. And so then by the 1880s, you kind of skip ahead to this first wave of immigrants, right? And this wave accounts for the majority of the mainland Portugal immigrants and the Atlantic Island immigrants, as well as their children. And so this wave tends to span from about the 1880s to the 1940s. And again, there were many, many immigrants coming over in search of these factory jobs. Funny enough, around the same time, this is when Portuguese immigrants also started to move to Hawaii to work on the sugarcane plantations, and that goes until about the 1910s. But this immigration really doesn't slow down until the 1920s, or specifically 1921, with the Emergency Quota Act that gets put into place, which seeks to put a literary requirement and a quota, depending on census numbers from these countries. And this was enacted specifically to target the Southern and Eastern European countries because a lot of these immigrants were unfortunately illiterate when they were coming over. And more importantly, at that time, they were Catholic. And so they were really trying to slow the immigration. But of course, the Portuguese immigrants, the immigration came back with a fervor in the 1950s. And this is our kind of third and final wave, or what we call the second wave of immigrants. And this was a result of the Capelinhos volcano eruption in 1957 on the island of Faial in the Azores. And so this is the time that we see the biggest Azorian immigration movement, and that lasts until about the 1980s. And so the reason for this is because in 1958, Congress enacted an act called the Azorian Refugee Act, which was actually co-sponsored by Massachusetts Senator at the time, John F. Kennedy. And this made 1,500 visas available for some of the victims of the volcano eruption. And so they were able to move to America in the Massachusetts area. And then this act was reinstated 3 years later. And so more visas were handed out. And then in 1965, the Immigration and Nationality Act was put into place. And this allowed for a big change, which was if you were a non-resident of America, but you had a family member who was a legal resident or an American here in America, they could sponsor you to come over. And so many of the Azorean immigrants who had come in the 50s and 60s because of the eruption through those visas were now able to sponsor their other family members in the 70s and 80s to also come to these places, one of which obviously included Lowell. And so that's kind of how we got the Portuguese community that we know and love today.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. It's very interesting. It's very important to know our history, right?
Absolutely, of course.
Talking about that, can you share a little bit, based on your work, the contributions that you see made by the Portuguese community in Lowell?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Portuguese community in Lowell is such a big part of Lowell's overall culture. And I think a lot of the Portuguese culture in general and things like the festas or, the holidays, the various churches around Lowell, the restaurants you see, even the language that people speak, it's such a influential part of the community. And Portuguese Americans, or specifically Portuguese immigrants, have been here for so long that Lowell really wouldn't be what it is today without the Portuguese community. And that's true for any immigrant community that comes to Lowell, of course. But specifically with this, the Portuguese Americans have really left their mark on this city. And, Lowell and Back Central and this whole area, it is so strongly influenced by the culture that exists.
Yes, I agree. And the language, talking about the language, I was reading that Portuguese, the third language, was spoken in Massachusetts. First English, Spanish, then Portuguese.
Yep.
Yes. So what kind of documents do you collect?
That's a great question. So technically, we collect anything of archival value, which of course means anything that's historically, educationally, or culturally significant to a community. Currently, we have about 3,800 items, even more, on our website. And this includes anything from photos of Carnaval dances or telegrams from Portuguese royals or passports and work permits from Portuguese immigrants, scrapbooks, brochures. I mean, you name it, we probably have it. And it's truly, it's amazing that we're able to collect these kind of things. And so we rarely collect physical items. That is the one thing about our archive that's different than maybe some other archives. Because we are a digital archive, we don't tend to collect many physical things because we prioritize our digitization efforts. But we do have some physical collections existing at the Center for Lowell History as a part of PATA. And I've actually brought an item here today from one of those collections, which is the Victor Ayres collection. Victor Ayres was the oldest of 12 siblings in the Ayres family, which is a very, significant Portuguese family here in Lowell. And he created this photo album during his service in the U.S. Army during World War II.
Wow.
And so I would love to show it to you.
Yes, I would love to see that. So can you share a little bit about the document that you bring?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, this photo album was created by Victor Ayres when he was enlisted in the U.S. Army to serve in World War II. And you can say it says service album. And he created this with a lot of love and effort. And inside are a variety of photographs of himself and his fellow soldiers.
Wow.
And their time in the various training camps that he served in, no matter what the weather. We have pictures of snow, we have pictures of the warm summers, and he also included some pictures of his loved ones and family members waiting back home, which really warms your heart. So that's a picture of him as well. And the best part is that he put a lot of work into this. So he not only took these pictures, cut out these pictures, but he also captioned each and every one of them. And so you can really see his voice starting to shine through.
And he puts his picture beside the church.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he has pictures of his siblings waiting for him at home. He has pictures of, as he says, the girls back home in Lowell. And so this photo album spans about 1941 to 1943. So it really gives you a good understanding of, what he was doing at this time and the various things he was doing while training to enter the war. And so it's really incredible. And I love this item for so many reasons. I mean, it's amazing to look at. It's so fun to flip through. He was very funny, so a lot of his captions will make you laugh. But I think the thing I appreciate the most is just, it has so much personality, and it restores the personality and voice to these people who we otherwise would never have been able to meet, And it's working with items like this that really gave me the passion for archiving in the first place, and just being able to get a personal insight into what life was like, not only in the 1940s, but for a Portuguese American, specifically in the 1940s, and then what it was like to be a soldier serving in World War II, being from Lowell. All the various things he was going through on a day-to-day basis. And again, like I said, it gives a voice to somebody who otherwise may have gone voiceless in history. And so being able to see that and to protect his memory with the very item that he put so much love and care into, it's truly an honor. It's amazing. So yeah, we're very fortunate that we have this item at the archive. But the Ayers family is actually unique in that they didn't only just donate documents to the archives. So you mentioned, what documents we collect. We also focus on audio and visual recordings as well. So we're not only looking into, papers and pictures, but also things you can hear and watch. And as a result of that, we have several collections through PATA that showcase music. And so we have
touradas, maybe.
we have lots of fado, touradas, things like that. Yeah. And it's amazing. So we have the Oliveira collection, the music collection, and the Melodies of Portugal collection, as well as the Ayers family recordings collection. And all of these collections do an amazing job of showcasing Portuguese music and Portuguese radio shows and Portuguese band performances. A lot of these families had family bands, and so we have recordings of their performances as well. And so it's amazing. The previous PATA archivist, Nikki Tantum, did an amazing job converting a lot of these from cassette tapes and CDs to digital audio files, which again encompasses so much of the work that we do at PATA, is making things that are physical into something digital so then we can share it on a wider span. So it's great. So if you're ever interested in listening to some Portuguese music straight from Lowell, you can go to PATA and it's all right there at your fingertips.
And thank you so much. That's amazing. I love that. Yeah. I was wondering if we have shared any recipes too. I would love
so recipes,
to have access to that.
I would as well. And recipes are one of those things that we're always looking for more. So if anybody knows of any, significant family recipes, anything that you may be hanging on to, that is something that we're always looking to try to digitize and get online. We do have a few, but not as many as we would like, because obviously foodways are such an important part of the Portuguese culture, and food is so important to our community that we would love to collect as much as we possibly could. Of course, it's not always feasible, but recipes are definitely one of those things we would love to look into more.
Yeah, usually when I ask, then they kind of go over oh, I don't really know the recipe. I just add a little bit, and then I will.
Yes, the entire Portuguese side of my family is very I just do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's can you write it down so I can put it somewhere, like a nice archive?
I know, right? That's fun. So have you noticed any trends with the Portuguese community for the past years?
Yeah, so one of the biggest trends that we've noticed is, unfortunately, the disappearance or the slow dispersal of the Portuguese American community. After the 1980s, around the time that last wave of immigration had kind of ended, one of the trends that was observed was a lot of children from that generation were slowly starting to move out of the back central area in Lowell. A lot of parents were choosing to raise their kids elsewhere. And so what happened is the Portuguese American community, grew in a sense, but just outside of Lowell. And so what this resulted in was, a lot of the Portuguese American clubs and centers, which, are the heart of the community, they started to see fewer enrollment numbers and, most importantly, fewer young voices. And so this was really one of the main motivating factors as to why we created PADA in the first place, because this is not a unique trend for Lowell. This is something that, Portuguese American communities across Massachusetts have observed. And so we really want to focus on collecting as much of the Portuguese American history and culture that we possibly can before, God forbid, it becomes much harder to collect. And we also want to show the Portuguese American community that, their history is important, and it's important no matter how small or personal it may feel, anything from family recipes to photographs to papers, it doesn't have to be something massive and significant to still be important to an archive. So, yeah.
I was thinking about crafts.
Yes.
Arts and crafts, os crochets.
Yes, absolutely, of course. Yeah, any of those fiber arts, definitely. Things like that are so important to a culture, and you wouldn't even think so, because it might just be, a habit or something you're so used to seeing, but it is important, and it's important to preserve that so then future generations can see the amazing impact that the Portuguese community has had on this city.
How can we contribute to that?
That is actually an amazing question. So the best way that anybody can contribute to PADA, interestingly enough, is by leaving a comment for us on our website. So our website is really unique in that on the page of every item that we have in the archive, there's a little comment box at the bottom where you can leave your name and your email and then a comment for us. And we really rely on community efforts in the first place to be able to, source our collections. But we also rely on the community very heavily when it comes to filling in the missing details that we may not have gotten when we were initially acquiring these collections. Sometimes we miss things like names or dates or places, street names, things like that. And so we have these amazing photographs up in our archive that, other than us saying man at beach, we don't have any other information aside from that. And so if you go to PADA's website and you happen to find that photo and you say, wait a minute, that was my great-grandfather. He lived in Lowell from this time to this time on this street. That's amazingly helpful to us. And even if it's a photograph that has 20 people in it and you can only identify one of them, that's still one more person whose name we have now have in the archive, and one more detail that researchers and future users can be able to, utilize for their own work. And so, if you think you would be good at maybe naming dancers in a carnival dance that we have, or, listing members of a soccer team from Lowell in the 80s, please come visit our website, leave us a comment. We love to talk. So, and we would obviously love to collect that information. So we could use all the help we can get. That's the beauty of a community archive, is we can rely on the community.
So I also have every year the Portugal Day. I would imagine you have a lot of material from that, like all the queens.
Absolutely, yes. We have a lot of pictures of the Holy Ghost queens and the São João queens, and videos, even recordings of the parades. And we have a lot of amazing things on PADA. So,
and how folks can have access to the catalog?
Yeah, so the best way to browse our catalog is, naturally, you can find our website at umlportuguesearchives.omeka.net, or you can just look up UML PADA and it'll probably come up on the first Google search. And our catalog is pretty much completely accessible to anybody who would like to view it. So because everything's digital, it's right there at your fingertips. And so if you come to our archive and you say maybe don't have an idea of what you want to research, but you want to look at the Portuguese archives, the best way to do that, you can browse our collections and see everything we've ever collected over, the, oh my gosh, almost 5 years that we've been doing this now. Or if you know that there's a specific time period that you want to look into, like say maybe you were in a parade at that time, or that's the year that you moved to Lowell. We also have a feature where you can browse by date, and everything's separated by the decades. And so you can go and search and see see every single item that falls under that time period. Or say maybe you come to the archive and you're like, I don't know what I want to look at, but I know that I really want to look at the bullfights.
Yeah.
Then you can browse by our subject headings, which is what we use as archivists to organize our items based on what they're about and what they're, discussing. And so you can click on, say, bullfights or music or folk dancing or politicians or, anything that might catch your interest. And we have the whole list there that you can look through and see pretty much everything, again, that's ever been separated into that category. And then finally, one of the coolest features that we have, at least in my opinion, is we have a map on our archive where every item that we have an exact location for, whether it's, a parade or it was taken out of center, or it was in this specific building, we pin it on the map. And so you can go to the map and see the full coverage of everything that we've ever collected. And you can zoom out and you can see, the international reach that we have as well. And so you can zoom in and say, oh, I wonder if there's anything on my street or anything at my church. Yeah. And you can zoom in and see, we have 20 items here. We have 400 items there, and you can look through every single location, which again is just another amazing way to access the archives. But yeah.
Is it accessible in other languages?
That is a great question. So unfortunately, right now, the archive itself is not bilingual, but what we collect is. So there are, a number of documents on there that are in Portuguese that we either translate in the description of the item or, we describe in some sort of way. But you can still view it in the original Portuguese text. I mean, we have items on there that are in Spanish and Latin as well. So if anybody else wants to flex their language skills. But yeah, unfortunately, the archive is not in Portuguese, but our collection is, we obviously don't want to discriminate in any way, shape, or form based on language. So the items themselves are in Portuguese as well, which is great.
And do we have to schedule an appointment to go over
that? Is material? Another good question. So viewing PATA, anybody can view PATA. You can view PATA from any device you have that can get onto the internet. So, anything where you can type in PATA into your search bar, you can visit it. But if you would like to see any of our physical collections that we have, the very few that we do have, or if you would like to talk in person or conduct your own research based on what we have, then yes, making an appointment with us is the best way to do that. And you can do that by going to the Center for Lowell History's website and making an appointment. There's a form there that you can fill out. Let us know your research need, and I will be the person to talk with you directly. I always love talking to people about the archives. So, please feel free at any point to make an appointment. Or if you're interested in just discussing PATA, you can always reach us at our email, which is pata@uml.edu. And again, I'm always happy to answer questions. That's where you can also leave comments. If you don't feel comfortable leaving comments on the website, but you still want to let us know about something you may have found, that's another great way to do it. So yeah, there's a number of ways to get in contact with us, but that's the best way.
I enjoy talking to you today. It was a
Thank you
delight.
so much.
And I learned so much about Prada. So I don't know if you want to share anything else with us.
Yeah, I will say follow us on our Facebook page. We're at UMass Lowell Portuguese American Digital Archives. I post there twice a week to showcase the various items that we have in the collections. And that's also the first place where I post when we have a new collection that goes up as well. So if you want to stay up to date with us, following us on Facebook is the best way to do it. And if you are interested in, immersing yourself into the Portuguese community, there's actually an event coming up through UMass Lowell called The Sounds of Portugal, an evening of fado. So if you would like to listen to some Portuguese music that's going on, the Saab Center is putting this on, the Saab Center for Portuguese Studies, and they're putting it on. They've been an amazing partner for us at PATA. It's thanks to them in the University of Massachusetts Lowell libraries that, we're even able to do this in the first place. So it's if you would like to immerse yourself and get that experience of listening to Portuguese music, please feel free to join us. I believe it's March 22nd.
March 27th. I'll be there.
Perfect. Great.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
So you're watching the Lowellian. I'm Alessandra Fisher. This is Nicole from the Portuguese American Digital Archive, PATA. Thank you.
Thank you.